Yeah, welcome to EASL Studio, your weekly hepatology broadcast news. My name is Thomas Berg, and today's studio session is entitled 40 Years of Journal of Hepatology, the Past, Present, and the Path Ahead. So we are here today to celebrate the 40th anniversary of JHEP, the Journal of Hepatology. But we are not just celebrating, I think, 40 years of publishing. We are also celebrating 40 years of making a real impact in the field of hepatology. When JHEP was launched 40 years ago, the world of hepatology and the world of publishing looked very different. But now, the Journal of Hepatology has grown into a global voice in hepatology. So today we want to ask, and we want to have a session about what did it take to get from there to here? What makes the journal not just successful, but also impactful? And where do we go next? So, and it's a big pleasure to introduce you to our team of current and former editors of the Journal of Hepatology. So a warm welcome to the current editor-in-chief, Professor Vlad Ratziu from Paris. Welcome, together with his co-editors, Professor Frank Tacke from Berlin. Warm welcome. And we have two editors from the years before. So a warm welcome to Professor Rajiv Jalan from London and to Professor Paolo Angeli from Padua. Again, a warm welcome. And then we had a former co-editor of the Journal of Hepatology and the first editor-in-chief of the JHEP sister journal, JHEP Reports, and this is Professor Jessica Zucman-Rossi. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
And we also introduced a renowned member also of the EASL governing board and a very wonderful colleague, Professor Annalisa Berzigotti from Bern, Switzerland. And he acts in this session a bit like to give the author's perspective to what we achieved and perhaps what needs to be done in the future. So I think we will structure a bit the discussion about more where we came from, what are the current situation, then talking a bit about publishing today, and then about the challenges and the future and what your thoughts are about the future of publishing. And of course, when celebrating 40 years and it has become a very successful journal, perhaps to start with you, Rajiv, what do you think were the pivotal moments or turning points or editorial decision that's changed the trajectory of JHEP, or what are the turning points that help JHEP to evolve into a leading journal?
So, Thomas, thank you, and thank you, everybody, and thank you, EASL, for organizing this great studio. I really, when I think about it, when I was sort of reflecting on today's meeting, it just sort of almost really interesting to think that I took over the journal at the 30th anniversary. And so it really is 10 years on, and it is great to reflect where we were and where we have got to. The first point is really that I inherited a great journal. I think that's the work of really the previous editors, and in particular 10 years preceding when I took over, and this is Massimo Colombo, who really started the growth of our journal. And Didier Samuel before me did a fantastic job in terms of already putting in place a team which was fantastic, a whole focus on increasing and beautifying the journal for where we were going and setting the stream for where we are. So I already inherited something that was pretty incredible and starting to change. But the most important thing that I think about as I reflect is that the growth of the Journal of Hepatology actually parallels almost directly the growth of EASL. And EASL really grew in the last 10 years from being a small European society to being truly global. I think there was a huge pride in the organization, which really set the stream for when I took the journal over, and everybody was very proud of the journal. Just one or two quick words there. EASL invested a lot in the journal. And there was almost nothing that we asked for that we did not get. And that really helped. We had the complete freedom to do what we wanted with no interference at all. And finally, I think EASL truly embraced this global framework, the geopolitical influence, geopolitics, which infected us to a great extent. But in terms of just thinking about the specifics, I think the first big thing is really the team. I think I must say, Thomas, Jessica, Ramon were my co-editors. And, you know, if you reflect back, we were probably the first journal where we feudalized the editorial system, where we had specialists looking after specific areas of work. So a person who submitted a paper really got to the top person who were making the decision, and early rejection did not seem so bad as it came from the expert as opposed to a non-expert editor-in-chief. And I think I was really proud of that, and we really created an unbelievable team which drove the story.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, no, Rajiv, I think these are very important points. And you also mentioned, and this brings me to the second point, perhaps the role of a society behind a journal, and perhaps to involve here at this stage, Frank, you were also part of the governing board as vice secretary at this time. So what do you see is the role of a society, or what makes it the difference that a journal belongs to a society?
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. I had the pleasure of serving in two editorial teams, one led by Paolo Angeli, and then now the new team led by Vlad Ratziu. I have to say, for us as a team, it's really an honor to service our community. I think that's a different approach that probably Rajiv already mentioned a little bit. It also comes with a responsibility, but if I compare us to, for instance, the Lancet journals, the Nature journals, they are all run by professional editors. And what we have is a very professional office that takes care of language editing, that takes care of graphics, of the layout. So really make the papers look very nice and very appealing to the audience. But the content is solely managed by academic editors. And I think that makes a difference. We feel the pressure of serving our community, but also that means rejecting a lot of papers. But as Rajiv said, we try to implement a system where really the well-respected people and experts of our community are the ones that serve as associate editors, as senior editors, and also as reviewers. And hopefully that is well accepted in the community. And so we reach out also to our peers so that they submit their very best work to the Journal of Hepatology. And we are very proud of that. And I think that also is reflected as an EASL journal that is evolving. Another part that is also very relevant to the journal is that we are the publication for all the clinical practice guidelines that are issued by the EASL governing board. And that's the only part that is not really managed by the journal, or where the content is actually managed by the EASL governing board. And that is very helpful for us so that we serve our community with the journal.
Yeah, and no, I think that it made the whole story very clear. And Rajiv, you mentioned also, yeah, the growth with the community and the team. And of course, I think from an author perspective, there are always a bit suspicions about, is it really independent? Is there trust? The responsibility grows with the growing impact. So what is really needed, and how we can convince authors that it's really a fair process?
Look, we've talked a lot about it. I don't think that, we can get it completely right. So the one thing that you may remember, Thomas and Jessica, we talked about a lot in our discussions were that we have to be transparent in our decision-making. And the second part, related part, is that we are going to get things wrong. We will get things wrong 10% either way. We will accept some poor papers and we'll reject some very good papers. And that's why we created the position of the senior editor in Richard Moreau, who did a fantastic job. And the point was that we kept ourselves open to a rebuttal without and gave the author the chance to really come back to us if they thought that we were doing wrong. And we separate the decision-making process of the editors by handing that process to a senior editor who was independent, so to say, of the team that had made the decision. So it creates a transparency, it creates a trust, and the fact that as an editor, I take responsibility for publication, good, the bad, and the ugly. So I think that's a culture issue as opposed to something that you can write down on a piece of paper. And I have very seldom, very often heard that people are unhappy with a rejection, but not as unhappy as they could be because we were taking the responsibility.
Yeah, Annalisa, perhaps it's not so easy in this kind of round to comment on this, but from really the outside perspective or what you heard from the community, how is it really the process perceived from the outside? Or
I do think that in general, our community is trusting us. So in general, I do think that our journals, so the Journal of Hepatology and JHEP reports have a very high, let's say, appreciation from our audience. And I think particularly from those who feel to be part of the EASL community, publishing in our journals, both of them, as an added value, because you feel really that you are contributing to the community, to what you belong, and that your voice will be heard by the right people, so by the audience that is the one that matters to you and to your work and to the research that you are interested into, and others will probably start a discussion on your findings also within the EASL community beyond the journal. So I do think that these are important points. Plus, I know that our audience or the right audience or the right authors value very much that the journals put forward and are convinced about the EASL values, so scientific integrity, trust, mutual trust. So what the authors also will put. So I do think that it's different to publish in our journals than publishing in other, let's say, professionally led journals.
yeah, and I think this also is reflected by what Frank said, that it's an EASL journal, right? So it's not something like independent with professional editors or so. You're really talking to the community and you get a fair judgment of the quality of the work or how it can be made better, because I think this is also a very important role of the editors, also helping, let's say, to make really a good story, a good paper out the data you have. Yeah.
If I may, maybe just to add something on that, and that is, I think the role of the reviewers are also very, very important, because it's also based on our community and our EASL community. It is also because we are really professional of hepatology and the research in hepatology that we can construct this network of reviewers that are now also more professional, but also inclusive of all the diversity, international and reviewers from abroad with different specialty, with all the multidisciplinarity that is necessary now to really carefully appreciate and evaluate each paper at really the highest level that we can. And I think it was really improving also during the last years. And during the 15 last years, I think it had improved really a lot. And this is very important, and we have to thank them.
Yeah, yeah. And perhaps if we have time, we can, when we talk about the future, can come back to this point of the review process in the future. But now I want to introduce you also, Paolo. And I know that you, when you were editor-in-chief, were very much interested in the issue of the importance of international reach and being truly international. So why do you think it's so important for an EASL journal to reflect global hepatology, and what does international authorship and readership matter? And perhaps how did it influence the journal standing?
Yeah, Thank you very much for the question, Thomas. I think that our mission is to build science and to disseminate knowledge in all the field of hepatology. And having said that, the high quality of the paper is a common denominator for every published article. The Journal of Hepatology, as you stated before, is an academic journal, is a brand of EASL, and thus it must serve the geopolitical perspective of EASL. And the geopolitical perspective of EASL is to be the home of hepatology across the border between states, geographic areas, and continents. And also, you know, thus we should serve our community, assuring dissemination of the best content of the journal, and also update educational initiatives such as the guidelines and others. This is our strategy. The tactics will be to maintain the Journal of Hepatology in the center on any scientific debate in hepatology. And how to do it nowadays? I think that the only way is to continue to strengthen the presence of the journal on all the social media with very innovative, challenging posts, because this is the way to reach the readers and even a complementary way to attract authors. I think that the Journal of Hep should cover particularly Asia. This is my view on the mission of the journal related to the mission of EASL.
Yeah, Paolo, thank you so much. And I think now it's also time to introduce our current editor-in-chief, Vlad. So perhaps before coming to what makes a great paper in JHEP now, what was your feeling when you took over the JHEP from Paolo, where you felt were the biggest challenges or the biggest improvements, or what were your thoughts in shaping the future of this journal?
Thank you, Thomas. Well, the feeling, of course, you feel the burden of responsibility, and you want to make things as good as possible. And we all realize that hepatology as it is practiced and research in hepatology as it is done in Europe can, bring us to new heights in terms of the quality of the work produced and also in terms of the quality of the work that is presented in this journal. So the idea was that if we're able to create a group of senior editors that reflect the breadth of knowledge and expertise in the different disciplines, we will be able to continue to improve the quality of the papers. And I think once you're on an ascending trajectory, things are easier. They're harder in a certain sense, but they're easier in a different way. And one of the aspects that's really remarkable and that we try to reinforce and continue improving in the journal is what I think Rajiv mentioned a bit earlier, which is that, well, on one hand, this is a journal owned by a society. So the thing is that the editors change every 5 years. There are other journals, the editors can stay in their position for 15 years. Here, they change every 5 years. But more important than that is the fact that we have chosen both the senior editors and the associate editors strictly based on their expertise, their track record of publications in the field, which means that when you submit a paper, you will be evaluated not only by your peers, but by the best of your peers, people who really know specifically the subject of your paper. And we try to arrange things in such a way in terms of handling the manuscript so that the most expert of us in cirrhosis gets the cirrhosis paper, the most expert of us in liver oncology gets the oncology papers, and so on. So I think that creates a lot of confidence, I think, in the authors, in the way we process the journal. And we try to, the manuscripts, and we also try to do the same in terms of associate editors, meaning associate editors with a strict profile on particular expertise so that we get the best people reviewing the best paper.
Yeah. Okay, Vlad, no, I fully understand, and I couldn't agree more. This is really utmost important. But coming perhaps now to publishing in JHEP, and of course, we are all driven by the impact, although also the impact factor as a metric is a bit challenged. But what really makes a paper JHEP worthy, and how do you evaluate a paper also beyond perhaps its impact on the impact factor? So how do you assess, and your team, currently papers being submitted to the journal?
Complex question. I think, first of all, of course, the quality of the paper, and because of our impact factor, the quality has to increase considerably. So no longer a small series, a lot of collaborative work, very large series, very bold questions asked, very innovative questions. That is one thing that is important. But also, not only that quality per se, but also the overall strategy of the journal, the overall vision that we have in different fields in hepatology, which fields will be developed in which way, in what direction. And we try to be at the forefront of that movement. So therefore, some papers will be selected because they go into that direction in the vision we have, according to the vision we have of the future of hepatology. And that's why you need a team of senior editors that know very well their field.
Yeah. And perhaps, Annalisa, before I come to you with again a question from the author perspective, perhaps to you, Rajiv. You know, sometimes a paper can be rejected because the editors feel, well, it's a great paper, but not for our journal. So is it fair to say, as an editor, that you in a way also have a certain mindset, how you want to shape the journal style? Is it a fair thing, a kind of storytelling? And Paolo mentioned it also, that you want to be attractive for certain topics in the field. Could you comment on that?
It's a very difficult one, Thomas. So as you may remember, you know, we had lots of debate about what we should be publishing. And we treated Journal of Hepatology as a science project. That is, you know, we were data-driven in a sense that our focus, as Vlad and Paolo and all of us appreciate, is quality. But our appreciation of quality was really, you remember, we created a new word called being fat in the middle, which really meant that citations for papers that had impact factor could be either based on articles that are very highly cited. Rather than that, we said we're going to become fat in the middle, which means that more papers are cited more often, and which is what I think we use as a metric to grow up. Just therefore answer your question, I think we were pretty agnostic when I was the editor-in-chief, with both of you working with us, to take papers which were relevant to our field without being judgmental about whether or not there was a track that we followed, because basic science was important and we covered the whole breadth of hepatology, even if it was a little bit outside the domain, including surgical articles, intensive care articles, and other papers that were coming to us from other places. So fundamentally, our job, I think, as an editor-chief, is not to say what it is that we publish. We publish everything related to liver disease or liver across the board, as long as it is high quality.
Yeah. And Rajiv, you mentioned basic science, and perhaps this is a question to you, Jessica, and also to you, Frank. This was always a bit an issue with a journal because our community is more clinical, and how really to reach for such a paper or for such a journal with nearly an impact factor of 30. This is far beyond many of the very good basic science journals, to keep high quality also in basic science, and yeah, to make it really also a home where people feel, if I publish a good basic science paper in JHEP, it also has this reputation similar to Nature Communication also, which has a much lower impact. So Jessica, do you want to start first, and then perhaps Frank?
Yeah, I think that really science is a continuum, between basic science, more translational science, to make at the end excellent clinical science. And we need to have these 3 steps, but in fact it's artificial, I mean, to divide science in these 3 categories. For me, it's really a continuum, and really we need to have good basic science and good relation between all the researchers to improve science in general. And it's not only basic science, but it's also multidisciplinary science. I mean, we need to have the look to and to cover all the different phases of science. Sometimes it's a new techniques, you know, and new techniques can really make a revolution in science. And sometimes, so it's very important to have a review. I remember in Journal of Hepatology, one of a very highly cited review was one at the time of the discovery of microRNA. And it was a very simple review on microRNA, and it was highly cited because nobody knew very well at that time what was really microRNA, and it was very well explained in this review. And so I believe that our goal is really to improve the discovery, and we can accelerate the discovery by talking each other and talking the different dialogues that we have in our specialty, basic, translational, and clinical science.
Yeah. And Frank, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I think we can congratulate Jessica and Rajiv, who really brought basic science in our journal to a new level and also made it a place for experimental work. And then Paolo and Vlad to trust us to continue on that path. If we would accept all the good science that is submitted to the journal, I think we have like 12 to 15 articles per month. We could have like 30 really great basic science articles or experimental hepatology articles per month. It's not simply the quality of the science, it's more the innovation and discovery aspect, I think, that we really value in the experimental papers. So usually I think what we look for in the journal is papers that make an impact also from a translational perspective. For instance, if there's a new discovery, let's say microRNA, as Jessica mentioned, or single cell technologies, new spatial technologies, a new discovery on circular RNA and so on. And then there's a first application showing the relevance for liver disease and also with a very translational focus. So having the human biology, primary human cells, organoids, and so on in the focus of an experimental paper, then the paper would really qualify for JHEP. I think as a service to the community, we not only expect excellence in science, but also innovation in the methodology and relevance for liver biology or liver disease. And with this, I think we are very open also to rare diseases, to very innovative preclinical therapeutic interventions, may it be gene therapy or may it be modification therapies or siRNA-based therapies. So we had really some groundbreaking work, and I think we can only encourage the experimental community. If you want to publish in a high impact factor paper, we can actually offer much more than, for instance, JCI or Nature Communications regarding the impact factor at the moment. And I think the community really recognizes the papers. So the basic science papers are actually quoted that are picked. Unfortunately, we cannot publish as many as I would like to publish, but at least I think we are on the right track here.
Yeah, and it really helps perhaps the readers to get in a closer contact because also the way they are presented is perhaps easier or
yeah, and also I think we're covering now, let's say, stem cell biology, metabolism. So from fields that are of relevance, if we want to discover a new target for MASLD, it's probably worth to understand insulin resistance, metabolic pathways. So very often we have basic science papers also reviewed from experts outside of the core hepatology field, just due to the relevance for other areas.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So Annalisa, to you, not only as an author, perhaps also as a reader, what is your experience with what we discussed and publishing in JHEP?
I mean, I think that from an author, but also from a reader point of view, you have a very good experience when you get into the Journal of Hepatology pathway, because if you are an author, what you would like is to be taken seriously. So whether everything goes very quick and the journal is not interested in what you did, and then you get a response as fast as possible, this is important. Second is, if what you wrote is interesting for the authors, then you get a feedback as detailed as possible to further improve your paper. And I think this is a very important aspect that together with Vlad, Frank, and the other senior editors, we are trying to pay attention at, not only in big methodological aspect, but also in small details. And for instance, in the visual abstract, that is an important part also of our communication strategy at some point, because this abstract will be shown at congresses. And from a reader perspective, you get an article that is easily readable, and there is a lot of work from the office that makes the process of making your article readable and simpler, let's say, smooth. And I think this is a fantastic work the office is doing with Joel and his team. And on the other hand, as an author, you do not feel overwhelmed with the amount of details you are asked to improve also the readability of your paper. So in general, I do think that the process overall is a very virtuous process. And what we also try to do as editors is to give a personal touch to decisions and to give a personal advice and to add a sentence or two to what the associate editors and the reviewers add in order to make closer to our community and to our authors what we do, and to explain our decision, which is, I think, is a very important aspect.
Yeah, your friendly editorship.
We try.
Journal of Hepatology. You can always reach out. No, that's great. I think we have to move forward and want to briefly touch on the launch of a sister journal. But before we continue with that, is there any comment from the editor team you want to mention? Yes, Paolo, please.
Well, before you asked about the secret of the success of the journal, I want to add only few things. I think that the hidden secret of our success stays in the creative and innovative minds of the editors and in the tremendous work of the office. You know, just to give you a data, Lancet has almost 100 members in the office in China. We are only 4 members in our office to serve all the world. So we should recognize that they are doing a tremendous and successful work. Then, of course, everybody say that the scientific value of the journal should evaluate beyond the impact factor. But the impact factor is the really driving force capable to attract the best papers. And there are also some other metrics that editors sometimes completely ignore or neglect. The Shimago score, for example. So based on the quality of the citation. And it is a strong index of the prestige and the reputation of the Journal of Hepatology in the scientific community. And in the future, of course, going to the single paper, beyond the number of citations, the number of visualization, the number of downloads is a truly proof of its relevance in our community. I think that we should take care about this new data when we evaluate the influence of a paper that we have accepted and that was published.
Yeah, no, this is an important point, and perhaps we have time to discuss it when it comes really to the future of publishing. But before that, perhaps a brief comment on launching a sister journal. So, Jessica, you were the first editor-in-chief of JHEP. You did the whole incredible, great work. But why? Why we needed, or at this time we needed a sister journal, and what gap did JHEP reports filled at this time?
Okay, I think historically it was in 2018 that the governing board asked the question, do we have to set up a new journal at EASL? And so we were thinking first why, and why they are setting up a new journal. I think at that time I was a senior editor with Rajiv as editor-in-chief, and it was already mentioned, we had the feelings that we were not able to publish enough good papers and good manuscript, amazing results that we would like to publish, but unfortunately the space in JHEP was limited, as now also, and we need to increase the space of publishing through EASL. And then the second question, so it was really the major reason to create a new journal, and it was for sure to serve the community, to have this space for publication and good publication. And then the second question was in which field? And as I previously...
Sorry, Jessica, to interrupt you, but to serve the community means a bit what we said. We are a societies journal, so many authors that submit the papers that belong to us do not find their way. Well, they can publish anywhere. There are so many journals out, but we really felt it should be within the home of hepatology, right?
Yes, exactly, because we are professional, we have a good process of selecting the papers. So by our knowledge of how to do this process, and was to serve more the community for these papers that we would like to publish, and that had no space in JHEP. And then the second question was in which field? So there was some discussion, basic research, only clinical research, and but as I mentioned, I really believe in the continuum of research. So we decided for a multidisciplinary research, I mean, that cover the overall hepatology field, research in hepatology, but also the specific topics that we wanted to address is novelty and innovation. And innovation, you know, sometimes it's difficult to evaluate also, because when something is very, very new, you have not already the time to have a clinical trial that with an amazing cohort and a huge number of patients and etc. So, but we feel that it is really innovative enough and that it can change the research for the other actors. And so if we have the feeling that a paper is really very good and it can change our view, our understanding of the disease, our understanding of a biological process, and then change the research for the other researcher, I think that really it's our duty to publish this amazing manuscript and papers. And so it's with this view that we created the Journal of Hepatology report, so the first sister journal, and we wanted to be also with an open access to all the community. So it is why we have chosen this model of Gold Open Access journal. And I think it's also very important to be able to keep the quality of the selection of the paper, but also to make the paper very fastly available for the community and completely open is something that is really new and that we need to continue in the future, because all the society is waiting for this kind of communication that is very important to disseminate the result of the public research and also the private research, but to the overall community fastly.
Yeah, no, Jessica, great. And I think this made it really clear. And I can really recall the whole discussion we had in whether it should be more a topical journal or, you know, and I like the idea that we are not, let's say, the most creative persons as editors or the society. It's really our society, the researcher, and they will tell us what they do and what they need. And of course, it can be in 5 years from now completely different and less to a certain topic we decided is now very much important. But Rajiv, you had a comment on this, or perhaps
just to sort of highlight where we are going. It's a little bit in the future. Maybe Jessica and Thomas, you might have a view. So look, when we started JHEP reports, JHEP was accepting 10%, 12% papers. Now JHEP reports is accepting only 20% of the papers. So therefore, are we going to have a third journal? And so are we going to have a fourth journal? You know what I mean? So fundamentally, you know, we are, I think about the EASL community. I said, these are our papers. We must own all these papers. So you've got impact factor 10, we need a paper journal 7, 5, so that we can publish all the papers that enter our door. So Jessica, Thomas, third journal, fourth journal, what do you think?
I think first perhaps to you, Frank, and then to Vlad. What do you think about more topical or more sister journals, but with a very broad?
I recall the discussions from the EASL governing board about a second journal. And I think what made me really proud is that we did not compromise on quality for the papers, but we were able to keep a lot of papers in our community. And actually the paper or the manuscripts that get a transfer recommendation from JHEP and that did not make it into JHEP for many reasons, maybe space constraint, maybe lack of validation cohort or so on, found its place in JHEP reports. And I have to say, with JHEP reports, innovation in hepatology, the papers can probably be a bit more provocative. They stimulate a lot of discussion. They are fast available. They stimulate further research, and it's great to have that in the community. We're still missing a lot of papers that we cannot keep in our community, and maybe some more clinically oriented registry-like trials and so on that make it neither into JHEP reports nor in the Journal of Hepatology. I would see space for third journal, but probably that would have to have a different focus than JHEP or JHEP reports, more clearly defined. That is my gut feeling.
Yeah, what do you think, Vlad?
No, I think you said it all. On the other hand, science is an open field, so we don't own science, but it would be good to help authors sort of cascade their manuscripts and help them in a smooth way to go maybe to a lower impact factor journal. That I think that would help the authors considerably. And the option of strong transfer is a very good example of that. Beyond that, there are a lot of other considerations in play, and I think a lot has been said already.
Yeah, and Annalisa, would you also feel that it's, you know, for your fellows and so on, I think it's, sometimes I have the feeling it's more difficult to get a paper published in JHEP reports as compared to JHEP. So they are very tough. No, it's an excellent.
They are tough, and I share the view of Frank and Vlad. I mean, if we could keep the good science and excellent science within our hut, so our home of research and home of hepatology, this is what we should do. Of course, there is a need of insight and reflection before doing such a good and big step. I think that there are fields that are not fully covered in our journals, let's say, at the extent that younger fellows maybe could be helped to. So why not? There needs to be a reflection, but from the audience, I think there would be the need, yes.
Yeah. So I think as a last part and in the last couple of minutes, we should talk about a bit the challenges in the future of scientific publishing. And this is perhaps first of all a question to you. So how do we remain rigorous and credible in a landscape of exploding submissions and tools? How do we ensure the quality and trust in an area of AI and also journal inflation, you know? It's so difficult to oversee it also for the reviewers. I don't know how many review requests do you get a day. So Vlad, could you give your thoughts on these issues?
Yes, those are complicated issues because a lot of medical journals have have been born in the past 10, 15 years, which corresponds to the amount of work that is produced, but also to all the other scientific societies' desire to do exactly what we do, to have the best manuscripts. So it is a big challenge, and especially I think for reviews, you see many times the same topic being published in very high-level journals in addition to JHEP. So that is a problem. Now, I would like to say two things that I think would be a good incentive for people to publish in JHEP rather than somewhere else. Number one is the fact that we try very hard, and that's really our core belief, that our job as editors is not only to select papers based on their novelty and quality, but also to improve the papers we receive. And the first time someone told that to me was Didier Samuel, and I can't think about how right he was in that opinion. A good editor is one that makes the paper better in the printed form than when it was submitted. And that's a lot of work that depends on the reviewer's talent, the associate editors, and the clear vision of the senior editors to make stratification between what the reviewers ask, what is possible, and so on. So number one, please be assured that we try the best that your work is improved as much as it can be improved with the data you have and presented with social media in the best possible way. Number two, once the paper is out there, what we try very hard to do is to open a forum for discussion, for controversy, for expressing different ideas, for challenging the dogmas. And we tried to do that in the past 5 years with Paolo and currently with the current team by opening up the expert opinion series where people can express their opinions based by facts, but maybe against conventional wisdom, and also by opening correspondence for meaningful responses to published articles. So these two aspects are very important, I think.
Yeah, and Rajiv, do you want to comment on this whole issue about artificial intelligence driven, whether it starts from reviews or written paper or so? Is it more a threat, or is it something that helped to improve the quality also in terms of writing for non-English native speaking?
So I actually think AI is here to stay. And I think that, we have to embrace it in its widest possible domain, providing guidance to the authors as to what is acceptable by the journal or what is not. So yes or no is not the answer. It's always yes, yes, yes. It is here. It's in our domain. We own it. We have to accept it. But what we have to do is to try and understand what it is, what are the limits that we want to accept, and what is the disclosure that the authors have to make in terms of the aspects of AI they've used in publication. Because I think, we should not walk away from it. This is an absolutely key element that will change science forever. In 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, we'll be doing science completely differently.
Yeah. Well, I think we all agree, or is there a different opinion? Someone who want to comment on this? Yeah, Paolo.
Yeah, I think that I fully agree with Rajiv. And the only chance that we have for the future is to assure a fair and transparent, high-quality revision process. And one of the challenges in this field is the crisis of the reviewers, because there is a proliferation of journals that entrust the same reviewers. So I think that the new team should think about how to reward our reviewers. Then, if we want to build a global science, I think that the journals should face another big problem, that is the polarization, even the politicization of science. We have different examples. The new nomenclature of MSLD different in different continents. The diagnostic criteria of ACLF different in different continents. If we want to build a global science, a real global science, we should counteract this phenomenon.
Yeah, and perhaps related to that, and because you are so interested, Paolo, in the global outreach, so how to build a journal that truly reflects and supports global science, also doing something against the barriers for researchers from underrepresented regions. So are there any plans or ideas? Perhaps Paolo first and then Vlad or Frank.
I have no plan, but when we think about another journal or other two journals, we should think that nowadays there are still big barriers related to gap in technology, language, and other tools that totally prevent large geographical areas around the world to connect their needs and their findings to the global level of science. We should give a name to these people and to these authors, you know?
Yeah. Are there any comments before we coming to an end? Yes, Jessica, please.
I fully agree, but also coming back to artificial intelligence, I think it's very powerful tools that we need to learn how to use them to help in improving also the publication and to limit the use of really in the improvement of that. Because one of the most important thing is that artificial intelligence and the generative artificial intelligence is based on the current knowledge. And what we are doing is also to evaluate the future and what is not already known, because what we have to publish is something that is new per definition. So I am not anxious. I mean, there will be the space for the role of the editors and also for the reviewers. I have no doubt at all. We did an exercise to use artificial intelligence in the process of evaluation that was completely worse, I mean, than everything. I mean, because it was evaluating something that should be for a new position, a new project, and artificial intelligence was not cutting enough what it does not know at that time. And so, but how to use it to have a better way and more fast summary, to check for specific topics that need to be included into a paper for the statistical test. I am sure that it will improve a lot all these constraints and all what we have to control that take a lot of time. And then we will be able to concentrate on the quality of science, the significance, the robustness of the science, of what is really new, of what we think that is robust enough to be published, for example. And so we need to learn how to work with artificial intelligence. And I'm sure that the young generation that will work with artificial intelligence very early during the career, we need to include them as new also reviewers and then young editors, and we need to train them, and they will teach us how to better use artificial intelligence. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, your all-day artificial intelligence assistant sitting next to you and helping with all the daily work. So Frank or Annalisa, do you have any comments on that? Something you want to mention, or is it?
I mean, we sometimes already see some signs of artificial intelligence misuse. So we are overwhelmed currently with letters to the journal that kind of do not really raise new points, but just seem to summarize and seem to be built by artificial intelligence, and think we need to be very attentive to that. But I agree with Jessica, we are already using tools to test for data integrity, image manipulation, and so on. And in that respect, the new tools that are being used by the EASL office are extremely helpful to kind of detect, let's say, at least obvious scientific misconduct, or at least an impaired data integrity, let's put it that way. And this is very helpful, and I think we will learn along the way how to make best use of all the new tools that are emerging. And who knows whether review articles will be as important as they are at this moment. Nonetheless, we usually choose for review articles really the authorities in the field, and it's very helpful to get their personalized insights into development in a field, and that cannot be done by AI, as at least not at the moment.
Yeah. I can only add a small comment. I think, as Jessica said, and as Frank also underlined, I think we need to be at the front of what is happening. So we cannot stay behind. EASL is already very much involved in trying to build interest around what we can do positively with artificial intelligence, but we need to learn from experts in other fields, because this is relatively recent in hepatology. So I think this is also a role of our journal to give sufficient visibility to the topics that will come in the future. And of course, we are trying to do this.
Yeah, thank you, Annalisa. So I think we need to close more or less this session. Would like also ready now to thank you all for your insightful comments. Perhaps as a two last rounds and comments for you, perhaps in one word. So what is the biggest challenge ahead in terms of publishing? Would you like to start, let's say, Rajiv first?
So I think it's artificial intelligence, actually. We've touched on it. That's the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah.
Positive. How do we harness it?
Yeah, Paolo?
I will not repeat artificial intelligence. I will say something else.
Yeah.
My main concern is not strictly related to the publishing activity. It is related to the capacity of hepatologists to maintain the leadership in the research and in clinical practice in some crucial topics, such as ACC and MESOD, because this is at the basis also of the publishing activity, you know?
Yeah, our fellows, it's not one word, but it's a great comment. So Frank, you're next.
Yeah, the challenge that I see is to stay at the forefront for our field, with these huge data sets emerging in the experimental field, with the requirements for conducting clinical trials and clinically meaningful research. It's truly a challenge to keep the journal at the standard and at the position that there is.
Yeah, Jessica?
For me, the big challenge is really to share the data and the results. And I think that we can accelerate research by sharing the data, but we need to have some rules that are also protective of the patients and also of the integrity of the research that are conducted with this data. But it's very important to improve research.
Yeah, and Annalisa?
So for me, I would say I would go even before all this, and I think the challenge for the future will be to protect academic medicine and research in general, and to bring new people, new generation into it. And this is a big challenge, I think, at the moment. So.
Yeah, and I hope, Vlad, you will not face any challenges, but in one word, the biggest challenge.
A lot has been said. The clinical research and experimental research becomes more and more complicated because we want more and more big papers. So one of the challenges will be to set up all these collaborations and networks between clinical centers to come up with huge cohorts rather than just monocentric cohorts. Another important challenge is to avoid forgery, to avoid manipulation of data, particularly for experimental studies. And that becomes very challenging because it's very time consuming. But as Frank said, we now have some tools to do that. A third important challenge is to make sure that the work we publish is methodologically sound, impeccably driven by good methodology and good statistical aspects of the research. So I would see those as the main challenges for the future.
Yeah, and the last round, because it's birthday of JHEP, and if you would imagine JHEP would be a person, so what kind of personality would it have? Do you have an idea? Again, would you like to start, Rajiv?
Awesome.
Awesome. Very good. Awesome. Then Paolo.
Awesome.
I think that the Journal of Hep will never be reduced to a single person, but to a group of inspired people who are fair, transparent, with excellent relationship into the community, not only with the work, but with behavior, personal behavior.
behavior and personality. The next, perhaps Jessica.
My wishes for the next years of Journal of Hepatology is really to continue with this fairness, to serve the community, the authors, but also the researchers, and disseminate the best of science.
And do you feel JHEP is already has a fair personality?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we have here another adjective. So the next one is perhaps Frank.
Yeah, I hope JHEP would be a person that stays really young, innovative, also vigilant to the changes in the world, always adapting to the new demands of the society, and also be rigorous and scientifically excellent. I think that's very important.
Yeah, Annalisa.
So I would like Journal of Hepatology to be as Leonardo da Vinci, so groundbreaking and very reproducible in all that it is.
But easier to decipher, not written right to left, right? With a mirror. You don't need a mirror to read Journal of Hepatology, right?
The last description for the personality comes from you, Vlad.
So I think it's you need a complex personality with a very good mixture of scientific rigor, skepticism, creativeness, open-minded, and of course, very obsessive on details.
Okay, so this celebration is not just about a journal. It's about a community, a shared mission, and the future of hepatology. So thank you all for being part of it, for leading the way forward and continuing to shape the standard in the decades to come. Thank you all for being here, for your invaluable efforts in driving the agenda of the journal forward. Many, many thanks for being here and for your insightful comments. And I would like to announce that you could join us next week, as we will have a debate on the future of endoscopic and interventional radiology approaches in the management of variceal bleeding. And please remember, if you are not yet a member of EASL, join the family and become a member, and submit all the your papers to JHEP and JHEP reports. Thanks a lot. Great anniversary to JHEP. Thanks to
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.